Beyond Interfaith Dialogue to Peace-Filled Community. The moderator in this panel is Dr. Jack Les Redfern from Indonesian Institute for Academic Partnership, or IIAP. And the speakers in this panel are, the first is Francina Yoveni from STFT GKI Isaac Samuel Kine Papua. She will present online. And then the second speaker is Mr. Ridwan El Makassari from Universitas Islam Internasional Indonesia. And then we also have Mr. Isaac Latu from Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana. So Pak Isaac have many fans here. Yeah? So to all speakers and also moderator, I kindly invite you all to go to the stage. Okay, Palens, the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today as we begin to look at some of the issues of interfaith dialogue. The topic today is interfaith dialogue, beyond interfaith dialogue towards a peace-filled community. And we're going to hear very different perspectives on interfaith dialogue and some of the challenges and opportunities. So first, we're going to hear from Dr. Francina. And so we will give you the time she is presenting online.
Thank you, Dr. Les, for the opportunity that given to me. In today's discussion, the focus is on the importance of interreligious dialogue in my context. We will explore the fundamental essence of interfaith life and provide examples of how interreligious dialogue occurs. Lastly, we will delve into the extent to which interreligious dialogue can guarantee peace in society. What impact does individualism have on the family as a basis for community in the modern society? Family is the base for a community. Family is the smallest form of a community. In a family, the husband, wife, and the children, nuclear or extended family, have principles and rules that apply to the family as the place where individuals are born and experience the socialization process, or family orientation and family procreation. The family is the first social institution that is universal and multifunctional, such as social supervision function, educational function, religiosity function, protection and maintenance function, and recreation function in the family. Several factors that influence changes in the family, such as the process of industrialization, urbanization, and secularization, have resulted in family in process in modern society losing some of their social functions. However, the main function of the family remains, such as biological function, which is the place where children are born, and factors that protect their care, socialization, and also provide an atmosphere of harmony for all family members. In this context, husband and wife need to build an understanding of each other, get rid of prejudice, be open, learn from each other, and not discriminate in the treatment of the families of both sides. Community have cultural orientation, values that shows what is the most valuable in life, that is social capital. Social capital is an informal value that is here to become a shared strength in society as a collective interest so that trust emerged. Fukuyama 2002 stated that social capital is an informal norm that encourages cooperation between individuals. It is a byproduct of religion, tradition, shared historical experiences, and other cultural norms. In politics, this fosters the associational life necessary for the success of limited government and modern democracy. However, awareness of social capital is very important to understand development, but difficult to produce appropriate public policies. Robert Feffner, 1998, proposed the concept of democratic civility, which emphasizes democratic participation and values of tolerance and equality. For example, take the value of living together among adherents of different faiths. The native Papuan people in Kokoda Sorong have embraced religious diversity and developed a culture of mutual respect and inclusion. During Christmas celebration, Christian brothers celebrate Christmas. Muslim brothers look forward to it and celebrate together, and vice versa during Muslim celebration like Eid. Another native Papuan community, the Kuri Irarutu community in Kaimana, promotes tolerance based on religious orientation. The second thing is beyond interfaith dialogue. From the first Work Mission Conference in 1910 in Edinburgh, Scotland, to the Third World Missionary Conference in Tambaram near Madras in 1938, the missionary movement struggled to come to terms with the question of how we should theologically assess the reality of other religious traditions. Henry Kramer, missiologist, was asked by the leadership of the missionary movement to undertake a deep study of other religion tradition about the Christian missionary imperative. In May 1977, a consultation held in Chiang Mai, Thailand, proved the landmark in the development concept of dialogue within World Council of Churches, WCC. An important document called Guidelines on Dialogue with People of Living Faith and Ideologies became the green light to continue as a program of WCC. The most significant are the bilateral and multilateral dialogue encounters of Christians with Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. This also engages with Sikh, Jains, Confucians, and Taoists, and people following traditional religions. Spiritual reasoning, or SR, is a new and much discussed method of interreligious dialogue. SR is a practical method of interreligious dialogue that involves reading and sacred texts of other faith tradition and group reflection. SR improve the participants' awareness of their own religious identity and their understanding of religious convictions as represented by the canonical text of other faiths. SR method is based on the recognition of the plurality of wisdom tradition, while accepting the authority of the scriptures of one faith tradition. The SR practitioner maintains openness to the scriptures of other faiths. Peace potential in religious tradition and within communities. Mrs. Angel, 2023, from World Vision Indonesia, stated that to promote interfaith dialogue is to talk about common needs and common interests of the community, about children. People from different religions, traditions, have issues with the children. they can share thoughts from their faith tradition. This becomes an entry point to strengthening peace and interreligious dialogue as set by Mrs. Siti Musda Mulia 2017. To strengthen peace means starting with education, training program, healthcare, nutrition program, and the availability of clean water and environmental sanitation, and continuing with advocacy for democracy, human rights, and religious freedom. Another statement from a Sri Lankan, Sujitar Sivanagayan, that in an approach of mutual respect, religion is the art of the solution, not the problem. I come to the last part of my discussion, a way to peace-filled community. Ubuntu is an African folk philosophy that means I am because you are. This means that I, as a person, as a human being, in the context of being a person, exist because the existence of other people outside of myself. The Ubuntu philosophy reminds us the relationship between oneself and others, both with inanimate and inanimate objects, as well as the relationship between human nature, God, social institutions, and state political institutions. The Papuan people believe that the relationship or relational connection between human and nature stem from their faith in God as the life giver. These connections are deeply ingrained in their philosophy of life and are passed down from one generation to the next through poetry and folklore. For example, the Wandama people sing about the relationship between human and ecosystem in the song Butanso, while the Komoro people consider the golden mountains of Nemangkawi to be the mother breast that provide nourishment to the valley inhabitants. Jesus' famous challenges to the family in Matthew 10, verse 34 to 39, for over examples for a critique of typical unite and conquer situations. Both in the Roman Empire and today, family structure has often become a tool of the unite and conquer method of imperial control. The same is true for self-serving racial, national, or religious community that define themselves over others and on the back of others. Interreligious dialogue among religions that would share concern for the liberation from the structures of empire. This is the kind of dialogue that can be generative and productive because its vision of unity calls for a constructive embrace of differences that broadens the horizon and provides energy. We might say that our religion tradition need to become religious in the word rather than claiming the abstract idea of word religious. I thank you for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Francina. Our next speaker is Dr. Ridwan from the University of Islam International Indonesia. You may know him as a scholar, but I know him as a fellow peacemaker. Right. So we will now turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for being here, Pak Les. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan, Rahayu, Salam Pancasila. Okay, today I'm very glad to be here as a former Master of Sociology in University of Gajah Mada. It's like coming back to the home. And today I'm going to share some of my views about the topic that Pak Les, when he invited me to talk about beyond interfaith dialogue to peaceful community. So here's my outline. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the working definition that I use in my works. Then about history, and then talk a little bit about the type of interfaith dialogue because it's not uniform, and then dialogue as elite and grassroots, and peaceful community, and some factors preventing Muslims from developing interfaith dialogue. And I will end it with summary. Regarding the working definition, I borrow from some scholars. The first definition coming from Shafiq and Muhammad Abu Nimr. For them, interfaith dialogue means to hold on to one's faith while simultaneously trying to understand another person's faith. And then the second definition I borrow from Merjanova and Patrice Brodeur. They used two definition here. First is a narrow definition. Interreligious dialogue can be human interaction and communication, primarily between religious institutions leaders, often excluding or greatly reducing the participation of lay people and particularly women, for the primary purpose of clarifying theological, philosophical similarities and differences. So here means like interfaith dialogue as elites, at elite level. And the second definition from a broader perspective, all forms of interaction and communication through speech, writing, and or any kind of shared activities that help mutual understanding and or cooperation between people who self-identify religiously in one form or another. So this is, I mean, like a grassroots level dialogue that fit with the topic of the discussion today. I think I will skip this. This is the most popular definition of interreligious dialogue from Leonard Swidler. I think those who are working of interfaith dialogue know this definition. And then in terms of the history, basically the interfaith dialogue, I just focus only as a contemporary movement because it can be until the ancient philosophical time if we are talking the roots of the dialogue. But I'm only focusing on as a contemporary movement, interfaith dialogue or interreligious dialogue can be traced back to the decision of some church to extend cooperation and build relations with non-Christians. For example, in 1893, the World Parliament of Religious that took place in Chicago. And then we have known about the Second Vatican Council, popularly known as Vatican II. The council moved the Roman Catholic Church toward in interfaith dialogue. And then we have known in some cities, in New York City, in US, in Kerala, in India, and in Chicago, there are some events related to the interfaith dialogue or interreligious dialogue. And in 1991, the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue of the Vatican published its own set of guidelines for interreligious dialogue. I'm talking a little bit about the history of interfaith dialogue or interreligious dialogue in Indonesia. In Indonesia, basically the ideas and practices of interfaith dialogue are not relatively new. It emerged in 1969, specifically after the Gestapo event, Gerakan September 30 in 1965. Conflict between religious communities where Muslim and Christian began to experience fragmentation. And in this regard, Mukti Ali is the founder of we can call it the founder of interfaith dialogue in Indonesia. Specifically, he contributed to the opening of a comparative study of religion at State Islamic University or Sunan Kalijaga in Yogyakarta. And then during the New Order, government, the orientation of interfaith dialogue mostly towards using structural approaches rather than a cultural approach. And we have known that Institut Dian or Yayasan Interfaith is pioneering of interfaith dialogue in Indonesia. It was established in 1991 by some religious leaders, academics and thinkers, for example, almarhum T.H. Sumartana, Daniel Dakidai, Johan Effendi. And since then, a lot of non-government organizations working for interfaith dialogue and peace building in the country. I think I will skip this one, but I'm just want to say that interreligious dialogue itself is not uniform. So I usually use the category of the interfaith dialogue by Neufels. Three types of dialogue that can be understood from a theological, political, and peace-building perspectives. Dialogue as elites and grassroots. So this is basically from my latest research on the politics of interfaith in Indonesia. So I found that in many countries, including Indonesia, dialogue mostly involves only religious leaders or religious elites. And then the form takes the form of theological dialogue. If we use the category of novels, that the goal is to know each other. But basically, this kind of theological perspective doesn't address the people's social problem. We can see from, for example, many religious leaders Forum for Tolerance or FKUB, Forum Kerukunan Umat Beragama, we have seen that some of their programs have not touched grassroots dialogue. So the Indonesian government and Islamic organizations such as Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah have also conducted some large scale of dialogue, even locally and internationally. But again, the results only ended with a declaration or communiques, such as Religion 20 that was held in November 2022 in Bali, and then the World Peace Forum 9 in Solo, if I'm not mistaken, 8 or 9. But we have seen that there is no impact after the events were conducted. And then dialogue as elites but I believe that dialogue as elites may still needed to be carried out, but it seems that non-elite dialogue or grassroots level dialogue needs to be strengthened to create social cohesion and a peaceful coexistence. So one way the elite nature of dialogue becomes visible is through its emphasis on reaching grassroots or taking dialogue to grassroots that is very rare, happen in many places in Indonesia. And then there are some practices from we use here from Pak Les. It's like a peaceful community, or I use maybe a dialogue of life from the category of the Vatican. So there are some research about this. One from Safik and Abu Nimr. They found that few Muslims in the United States were active as interfaith participants, and the Muslim community of Rochester in New York was of this view. And they found that through the good relations between Islam, Christians, and Muslim, the Muslim community as a result successfully protected the areas Muslim from discrimination prior to 9/11 tragedy in US. And the second research coming from Swami, he did research in people in Gramam in India, South India, which is in a religious conflict, when there is a religious conflict there are one area, it's called it Gramam, cannot touch by the conflict. Yeah? So in this case, he argued that interaction of multiple identities and human being, or among human being, is a common factor that has often been ignored at the cost of emphasizing religious identities. And based on my some observation working on this field, I found that some practices, good practices of grassroots dialogue have occurred in some areas, for example, in Manado, in Kupang, Mataram, and surrounding areas, as well as in Banjarmasin. Those are places that I visited working for Interfaith dialogue. I think there are still many of the some practices that are not exposed so far. Also, I would like to share a little bit about the story of Papua, because I was working as a special staff for FKUB for 5 years. And then we have found that from some research that one from Idrus Al-Hamid in 2017, he argues that religious conflict has rarely been a live issue in Jayapura. So in most communities, the relationship between Christians and Muslims continue to be very harmonious, marked by the open house concept and visiting each other during the religious day celebration. Also in Pakpak, research done by Tony Wangai. And then I found that there are some factors for the success of the dialogue of life. So first, in the religious sphere, people, regardless of their religion, need to avoid discussion regarding religious beliefs. Let the discussion about beliefs to the theologians, not to the lay people. And the second one, not harming or violating places of worship, and then a rejection of subjecting religion and its intellectual and leading figures to insult and mockery. And regarding to shared values, emphasizing taking care of the family, condemning violence and terrorism in all its forms, and then encouraging the scientific research that is essential for the improvement of life. And with regards to mutual and peaceful coexistence, to adhere to the obligation of citizenship in the sense that they all enjoy the same legal facilities, supporting social integration at the family level, and raising ourselves about trivialities, mutual occupation with the higher necessities of a noble life and developmental affairs. And here, there are some factors, according to me, that prevent Muslim developing interfaith dialogue. First is some Muslim raise concern about interfaith dialogue, first because the danger of mixing Islamic teaching with other religious teaching. So this we know as a syncretism. Yeah? So they are reluctant to do the interfaith dialogue. The second one, other Muslim participants confuse interfaith dialogue with conducting da'wah or calling to Islam. And the third one is the belief that such dialogue is no more than a polemical debate among theologians of different religions. And I add one more thing is the growing of conservatism and radicalism understanding that they deny the living with non-Muslims, or they reject the pluralism ideas and concepts. And this is my summary. First is grassroots dialogue has proven to be more powerful in preventing local religious conflict and resulting in a more harmonious life and a peaceful coexistence, because religion is not a differentiating tool in public relations. And the second one, the conservative understanding of religion, which tends to be radical, as we have found in some places in Indonesia, or Martin Pambronis says the turning of conservatism among Muslims is an obstacle to achieve the communal harmony and peaceful coexistence, because they deny the dialogue and also a religious pluralism. I think I will be stopped here, and I'm more than happy to get some comments and inputs. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Ridwan. I see some commonalities between Ibu Francina and Pak Ridwan as far as looking at the importance of the family and the role of community to work together in the area of peace building. Next, we were going to hear from our friend Pak Isaac. I know him as a scholar, but also as a peacemaker. So we look forward to hearing from your perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you, Pa Les, for the invitation, and also thank you, committee, for giving me stage here. Kakak Pendeta Sin, thank you so much for your presentation, and also Abang Ustad Ridwan for your presentation. The two presentations give open avenue for my presentation today, and some of my students around here, so from Satyawacana and from CRCS Gajah Mada, so you may just close your ear because I think you're familiar with these issues that I'm going to present. So my presentation centers on the idea of rethinking interreligious dialogue from my new book, based on my new book published by Brill this year. And the second one is a book chapter published by Bloomsbury Academic also this year. My first research is based on multi-sided ethnography research in Maluku. And second publication is from my experience infected by COVID-19 virus after coming back from an academic talk at Princeton Theological Seminary in New Jersey. I observed the dynamic of live and death dynamic within the ICU room, where normal scholar unwilling to get closer to the red line of COVID ICU room. So I conducted a focus group discussion with medical workers about their experience inside the deathly space of ICU room. My presentation is an research invitation to go beyond material spaces. Belum yang tadi, come back. Yeah, material spaces, like table and room, as well as canonical texts. So using perspective like Pencatrao mnemonic texts, like texts in imagination and memory, as a critics to canonical-based interreligious dialogue that based on the text. Next, please. So my work create new space for interreligious encounter in oral-oriented society and push back the imperialism of ink within the body of interreligious studies. And instead, interreligious engagement, in this research, it tied up with ritual, folk song, symbol, and other religious practices from Vita Activa, like taking Hannah Arendt or life practices. When I first started this book, my colleagues in Berkeley and also Cambridge, Boston, asked questions on how folk song and music serve as a means of dialogue. So, Christian and Muslim choir will sing together in a room? Will they read each other's song script and put it into dialogue? This question reflects the logic of formality and imperialism of ink in scholar understanding of interreligious dialogue. My book instead using means of orality to question formality and domination of literacy in the research of interreligious relation. Next, please. So, why rethinking interreligious dialogue? In this research, my book, I listed the 6 tracks of formal interreligious dialogue. The first one is canonical text, as if the text only sit on ink and other forms of literacy, while people in oral-oriented society employ different concepts of text mnemotext or text in orality, symbol, ritual, folk song, and many more. Second, formal conversation as people sitting and meeting in a formal setting centered around the table and room. People in oral-oriented society have a different setting to encounter with religious others. Third, many society in the global south imagine the existence of table in mind, in imagination, and conduct interreligious practices in informal forms. Or, interreligious dialogue in my studies, Bang Ridwan also mentioned about that, lies on religious elite's shoulder. However, in my research, as in Bang Ridwan and also in Kakak Pendeta Sin's research, everybody could be in the interreligious engagement. Fifth, male-dominated forum. Bang Ridwan also mentioned about that. Interreligious dialogue is a predominant picture in many areas of interreligious dialogue. We can see it's dominated by male. Why my research show otherwise? Women and children contribute to a critical part of interreligious engagement, and it is important to interreligious studies. Six, chit-chat tendency in interreligious dialogue to be also dominant structure. It's a dominant structure of interreligious dialogue because it is too formal and does not engage people, everybody human needs. Although this dialogue creates sense of the passing over and coming back with a larger picture of interreligious, of others and mutual understanding, but in many cases, it's only like trapped in, sorry to say, like hypocrisy and genuine heart to accept others. Next. So this to research also serve as a form of what I call it decolonizing interreligious dialogue. This is important. This is the colonizing interreligious dialogue. It is voice from global south on how we have interreligious dialogue. This to research itself as a form of decolonizing interreligious dialogue, once again using Linda Tuihai-Smith idea on the colonial method. This research called for a dialogue between formal religious texts and texts from the global north with the text from everybody live religion in global south. I focus here to find the text in dialogue in everyday life, live religion. So quoting from, like, borrow from Nancy Ammerman, she is now in Salatiga as a visiting professor, because we have a multiple texts and there is no single text, and I don't believe in panacea theory of dialogue that brought from other places and then implemented in one particular place. So every society has its sui generis or collective consciousness by which interreligious engagement could be based in a given society. The manyness, this is the concept where I put it in my book, introduction of my book. The manyness is important framework in this research, as we have richness of cultural toolkits and alternative methods for dialogue. In this sense, everybodyness, manyness and everybodyness is the main spirit in this study. I invite subaltern voice from the margin, into conversation in interreligious dialogue, not only through ink-based texts, but also the oral text and text in memory, and not only in the elite, religious elite hands. Next. So, tertiary, in this book, I also propose tertiary orality concept. Tertiary orality combines core function of primary and secondary orality. Narratives reach broader audience in global public spaces, while audience could send the narrative back to virtual space. Okay, pardon me. Yeah. So in internet area, in internet world, that everybody can also click and send their voice to YouTube or Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so on and so forth. So virtual reality can also be another means of interreligious relation. So interreligious dialogue in oral-oriented society may work best through oral-based practices like ritual, symbolic imagination, quotidian networks, and so on. I quote from a song by a music group from the island of Ambon. In English, it says, "The history of ink does not speak. It is the folk song that tells the story." The whole narratives of songs started my book. So I got the idea of the book from this folk song. That in Indonesia, it's like this, like sejarah tinta tidak bisa bercerita, tetapi lagu tradisional bisa bercerita tentang banyak hal. So the history of written ink does not speak. It is the folk song that tells our story. So practice of orality function as the storage of memory and imagination to develop mutual understanding with religious others in oral-oriented society. Next. So my second platform of interreligious dialogue is based on the crisis. So please allow me to read from Professor Joel Carpenter from Calvin University, response to my book chapter in Interconnectivity, Submersion, and Healing in Oral Christianity, edited by Apu Adogame of Princeton and Amin Tarrington by John Brown University. He said, "I'm particularly grateful for your essay, which examine the shared spirituality and interfaith fellowship that you witnessed in the COVID-19 IC room. This is important. There is nothing, it seems, like shared adversity and the facing of death's door to bring people in faith together." So that's time of crisis. We have crisis in many ways, calamity, we have flood and many more. So this story reminds me of, he said, the story reminds me that those that emerge from wartime situation, the ages that circulated in America after Second World War, blah, 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 blah. Last one, perhaps what you saw during the pandemic may become the lasting effect of its too. So the crisis is very important subject for us to study interreligious dialogue as well. So my study from hospital IC room and beyond during COVID-19 pandemic, I saw many people create anti-sacred space. This is the concept that I developed in this book chapter from anteroom in the hospital. So anteroom is room between patient and hallway in the hospital. Its function, so the room function is actually to negatifying viruses and bacteria, but during COVID, it's function as a prayer room before medical worker meeting patient with deadly virus. The shifting of an ante-room function as a metaphor of how human being see the crisis, and it could alter somebody's ideas, room in our life, and we can also create many rooms to pray together for others. Therefore, finding interreligious engagement central to social solidarity, this book chapter investigates interreligious prayer as an expression of how religious people in a pandemic context cross religious formalities and boundaries. Prayer from medical workers to patients or among medical workers have shaped the sense of interreligious understanding, or what I put it here as an anti-sacred space. So logic of anti-sacred space, logic of anti-sacred space in interreligious prayer as a part of engagement, like is an agent may pose a prayer according to a given religious tradition, but religious others who receive the religious language and practice it into common language, and then put it into intersubjectivity, so it has become subject and subject relation, not just medical workers and patient or vice versa. Then the self or the patient, for instance, in my case, will translate the language into given congregational language or parochial language and practice into exclusive practice as well as self-reflection in collective and religious awareness. So the prayer, like in my case, the nurse pray in Islam and I take it into universal language, bring it down to my Christian faith as well. So for me, interreligious encounter in quotidian spaces reflect everyday relationship where people from different religious background employ tactic to develop social mutual engagement that dissimilar again, to unlike elite strategy that divide people based on religious background. This is everyday initiative for mutual interreligious engagement, like I mentioned in the book chapter, beyond material, space, and canonical text. So my last one, please allow me to to read from Professor Michael D. Jackson of Harvard Divinity School, who will review my book. He said like this: I was deeply impressed by the way in which you demonstrate the power of a grounded ethnographic method coupled with a personal commitment to people engaging seriously with the practical and ritual life of Maluku, Indonesia, and illuminating the informal, unscripted, formal forms of sociality in an oral culture that create forms of communitas and conviviality that are difficult to create in literate and hierarchical societies where the authority of the text and the hermeneutic is considered more important than egalitarian and immediate interaction of a congregation or community. Your book, he said, is a brilliant written testimony to the lived world you know so intimately and stunning critic of European-centric assumption about interfaith dialogue. He also say, I do hope that this work, I skip that. So this is actually like the praxis, he said, rather than dialogue, the power of doing things together over the power of speech alone. So thank you so much. Thank you for taking me.
Thank you, Pak Isaac. Do we have time for another presentation, or do we need to go to questions?
Still have 10 minutes
10 minutes,
10 minutes.
for
Yeah.
another presentation,
Yeah.
or for, okay.
for presentation.
Okay.
Sorry.
No,
Take a look.
no, it's good stuff. One of the things that we are hearing from all three of the participants is a couple of the importance of grassroots. And how lived religion might be different than the academic religion or at the elite level. We're also hearing from all of the participants that there is no one right way to do interfaith dialogue. It really is contextual. And so I'm going to briefly go through a presentation. Mine is, it's interesting, I come to the interfaith table and I come to this workshop as a practitioner, not as an academic. However, what I'm finding is that my presentation is more academic than my friends here, and theirs is more practical. But my approach tends to also to become from a trauma-informed perspective, where in a trauma-informed perspective, you can go to the first slide, really deals with human dignity of every individual, that we are all equal. It's about safety, and it's not only about physical safety, but this means emotional safety. It means psychological safety. It means emotional safety. And my overarching question for anything that we do in the area of peace building is, does it work? Does it work? And what I mean by that, does this approach that we have, does it lead to peace from the Judeo-Christian perspective, shalom, which is all-inclusive of life? The current assumptions, next slide, the current assumptions of religious freedom is that it is a human right to have freedom of religion, conscience, and practice. Interfaith dialogue leads to mutual understanding and respect of religious adherence, As we increase our understanding of our religion as well as others, it actually builds more tolerant religion, and tolerant religions actually reduce the threat of violence and lead to peaceful coexistence. Quite honestly, the research on this is mixed. Does that really lead to peace? It's really going to depend on the context. Next slide. One of the challenges that we have with the current religious freedom approach to peace is that engagement is defined, the way that engagement is defined is by our differences. We don't come together as one, we come at it from a perspective of us versus them. The other issue that we have is that religion requires a definition in order to figure out what is legitimate religious expression. And the problem with this is that your governments, or there's a select group of elite people who actually are trying to define what is that religion. The problem is we don't agree on what is religion. And when you have, we call this governed religion. And so when you have governed religion, it actually privileges some forms of religion over other expressions. And so if I am somebody who is not recognized, or I'm part of a sect of a particular religious perspective, or I'm not even recognized, then I am actually marginalized. And so that is a challenge of the current religious freedom structure. The challenge of religious freedom also is that religious practice is informed by cultural, social, historical, and political realities. Where the real challenges are not at the academic or at the elite level, but the real issues are at the practice of religion in everyday life. And it engages all of life. It engages our relationships, our economics, our beliefs, our practices, our political worldview. And so it actually is a very complex issue. And our religious beliefs and our religious practices are not developed in a vacuum. And therefore, it's important to look at the cultural context. And so any approach that we have to religious engagement, religious freedom, has to be built on religious freedom and lived religion in its own context. And it requires a holistic approach. And so I would like to suggest this morning, next slide, or this afternoon, is that there might be a better way to actually help us to engage in interfaith dialogue as well as peace building, and not so much based on our different religious perspectives, but on human dignity. And that was kind of mentioned in a couple of the other presentations just a few minutes ago. Human dignity, our humanness, is what actually unites us. Our humanness does not divide. We all have very similar needs. We all need food. We all need shelter. We all need safety. We all need to be treated with respect. We all need to have an opportunity to thrive. And so despite all of our fundamental differences, we're actually equal when it comes to our human dignity. And you heard about the engagement of it's male-dominated interfaith work. Well, in dignity, it is inclusive of women and children and all ethnic groups. The dignity question answers a lot of different questions. What is needed in my particular community context to live a life of dignity? What is it that my neighbor needs? Not just what do I need, but what is it that my neighbor needs in order to live a thriving life? What are the systems or the practices in my particular community? And you can ask this also of our own faith traditions. What are some of the systems or the teachings or the perspectives or the theologies that actually help in human thriving or actually hinder human thriving for everyone, not just our own people? And how can we work together in a situation to solve these issues of dignity in a way that brings thriving for everyone? There's 3 building blocks to this. Next slide. As dignity basically means that everybody is equal. We might have different perspectives, but we share similar values. Next one, quickly. Dignity can be based on religious perspectives, from an Imago Dei perspective, that We are all created in the image of God, and therefore we have equal access to God, we have equal equality with God, and that we have unearned, and this is what's important, we have unearned worth or status that is given to us innately just by the fact that we're created as human beings in the image of God. But we also have the human rights approach. And from the Declaration of Human Rights, it says that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and in rights. In other words, we all have a special status that is granted to us simply by being a human being. It is not granted to us by somebody else. So whether we want to take it from a human rights perspective or a religious perspective, dignity is a part of that process. Next slide. When we talk about safety, in order to have a peaceful or a peace-filled community, we have to have all of our needs met. We have to be emotionally safe. We have to be socially safe. We need to be politically safe, economically, physically, and relationally. And all of these instances are inclusive. They're holistic. They don't just impact our family. They don't just impact our kampung or our neighborhood. They don't just impact our province or our nation. They actually impact the whole world. And as you begin to see, there's an integrative approach here, that there's many different avenues of which we can engage together to solve the problems of human thriving. And it doesn't rely on just our religious perspectives. Next slide. The other part is that we need to belong. It doesn't matter how individualistic we are or how independent we are codependent on other people. And I have some really good friends that said, no, I am a self-made person and I'm not dependent upon anybody. And then I asked them, did you make your clothes? No. Did you make your shoes? No. Did you make the car? No. Did you build the roads? No. We are dependent upon other people. And back to what Ibu Francina says, we exist because other people exist. And we know we exist because of our relationship with other people. And so for us to have a peace-filled community, we have to have mutual trust. And that means we have to have healthy affection for one another. It doesn't mean that we agree on everything, but we do care for one another that goes beyond who we are, but for human thriving. And there is a mutuality that is with us. And when it comes to belonging, there is a difference between belonging and fitting in. Fitting in basically says, I control what I say, I control what I do, I watch how I act, there's things that I say, there's things that I don't say, there's questions I ask, there's questions I don't ask, because I want to remain a part of the group. That's fitting in, but that's not authentic relationship. Authentic relationship is that I have the ability to express who I am with integrity, knowing that I will still be welcomed in that group and I will still be a part of that group. And that is a challenge for us. But that is what real belonging is about. We can fit in, but until we can be a people of integrity and the people that we're in relationship with will honor that and we treat them with integrity, we can't have a peace-filled community. So quick summary. You can go to the next one. So dignity requires the right of freedom of religion, conscience, and practice. We need to be able to speak our piece and speak our mind. Religious teachings and practices or lived religion can have both positive and negative consequences for our human thriving. And it's important for us to critically look at our own religion and not just at other perspectives. Healthy interfaith dialogue focuses on lived religion, requires us to be humble. And we need to be discerning of our own faith traditions as well as the practices that our traditions have on community. An interfaith dialogue needs to be based on empathy for the other. We need to work together to solve the issues of life in order to build a more peaceful and just society. It's a tag word, but it really does make sense. And what happens is when we have interfaith dialogue and it moves and is based on the foundation of human dignity, then we are able to move beyond just our differences, and we are able to move beyond coexistence to where we are actually thriving together and we're embracing one another in a more peaceful community. Thank you. How much time for questions?
10 minutes.
For a question, we still have 20 minutes.
15?
20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we get our questions and just go to the microphone and we'll go from there. So please. So the sign of a good professor is either they do such a really, really good job to make the presentations clear that you have no questions. The sign of a not good of a professor who's not so good is they make so many comments that you don't have a clue what they said. So please ask your questions. Yes, sir. Please go to the mic. And please tell us who you're addressing your questions to.
Hello, my name is Sudi. Maybe this question for all of you,
Okay.
because I can see the connection of what you say. I mean, based on your explanation, I can say that Indonesia, we have best practice, right? I mean, how interfaith dialogues happen in Indonesia. But how to unearth this best practice, right? I mean, in Maluku, in Papua, and in where I grow in Papua also, in Kokoda, I see by myself how people in the village, like they open house, they can go to their neighbor to celebrate Christmas and celebrate Lebaran, Idul Fitri. So how to unearth this problem? And I can see from your presentation, you mentioned about rethinking of narrative and so on. And I will say maybe we should rethinking our religious elites' role in Indonesia.
Sure.
I mean, because we, in my opinion, like, if we have problems, if we have conflict between religions, the role of religious elite important. But if we are in peace, like because you mentioned beyond interfaith is for peace actually. So in peace condition, how we maintain interfaith dialogue so that this best practice can happen everywhere in Indonesia, not only just case by case, not in Java, if we mention more seriously, like can we see it in this island as well, how the best practice happen in other province, in other regencies in Indonesia? I think that's my question.
Good question. Why don't we do this? Why don't we have Ibu Francina speak from the Papuan perspective? Are you still with us, Ibu Francina?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Why don't we have her speak from that perspective? Pak Ridwan, could you speak from the Maluku perspective? And then we can get Pak Isaac to talk from the Javanese perspective. How's that? Okay. Ibu Francina?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. And you yourself, Sudi, experienced it, in Kokoda, because I also take that example of Kokoda's people. Actually, it is basically go back to their philosophy of their lives, actually. I found it very strong. I found it very strong when we talk about this interfaith dialogue and the current living community, or even from the past up to now in Papua. It's based, actually, it is grounded really on the way of living, actually. It's based on their philosophy, life philosophy. Because the way that as I mentioned, that the way they look at somebody, seeing somebody, it's part of themselves. So I am exist because you are exist. When I'm saying you are exist, it's not only about a personal relation between human, but also with the nature. So it lives in the one circle, one ecosystem, one cosmology. So that is things which I found it very strong. Of course, I have also fear that if this only I agree with you, Sudi, your observation, that we have to bring the elites, religious elites, to understand this very basic understanding of this. Otherwise, in many conflict, when the religious was used as a tool to promote different idea of out of the peace, this is the dangerous things. So I agree with you that the interfaith dialogue is not only about talking in the elite level. It is not only in the academic level also. This is something that we have to talk in the community level, in the grassroots level. In my presentation, I really put family. So it should be go back to the family level. So that should be there. So depend on the, depend on the approach that we are going to do maybe. But I'm thinking of what is the outcomes of this panel or this consultation or this seminar. Should we go and work how to prepare something or produce something which is honored by the people that we are talking about them, about the community. So that's what what is my thought. Thank you, Pak Les.
Thank you. Pak Ridwan?
Okay, thank you, Pak Sudi. That's a very good observation. I think Pak Bang Ishak will talk about the Moluccas or Maluku case, and I am going to talk a bit general, yeah, especially in Indonesia and in particular in Papua. So I have mentioned in my presentation that interreligious dialogue is not uniform, and then in Indonesia basically we have some best practices about interfaith dialogue at grassroots levels, because it seems to me that a lot of interfaith dialogue on the high level, for example, Religion 20 and World Peace Forum doesn't give a lot of impact. And this is I found from my research on politics of interfaith in Indonesia. Some of the members of Muhammadiyah criticize the World Peace Forum because after 9 World Peace Forum have occurred, in some places in Indonesia there is no impact, or just like end up with a declaration. Yeah. But the problem is how to replicate or modify some good practices in other areas. Although I'm totally agree with Pak Bang Ishak that there is we cannot replicate some best practices totally with some areas, in some areas, because different context and different of it's kind of geography, people and others. But I found that they have some traits or that some commons that I think if Muslim or Christian in some areas not really rely on too much religion, yeah. Because I explained before that one of the obstacle to create the dialogue at a grassroots level because of the understanding, religious understanding. If the understanding is the growing up of conservatism or radicalism, something that happened in Papua before 2000, or during the New Order government, and before during the Dutch. We have not found it's like a religious conflict, because people can walk together, and they don't rely much on the difference. Religion as a differentiating tool in building relationship, but because the presence of some transnational group coming to Papua as part of the migration policy by Suharto, and we can see some of the radical teaching in the mosque, and some people try to create a prejudice and stigmatization toward other religion. I think it also happened in some areas in Indonesia. So my point is, if we try to promote a peaceful community or dialogue of life, we need to decrease it's like the conservative understanding among the people, and let the theologians debate or try to find commonalities regarding the text, doctrine, or the holy book. I think that's my point.
Yeah, thank you, Pak, for the question, and also for the reflection. I think we trap a lot in our Vita Contemplativa structure, rather than go deeply to Vita Activa. Means what? We don't really trust our knowledge, our philosophy. We, like in terms of, in context of Java, we have Wang Sinawang context that's actually bringing horizon together. We trust Gadamer, but we don't trust our knowledge. We don't trust Wang Sinawang, that you have to go to others. You have to bring your horizon closer to others in order to understand others. We don't really believe in ajining diri ononeng lati, that your lati is actually your integrity. Your tongue is, your word is your integrity. It's not only in materiality, it's not only in ink, but it's on your word. We don't really trust that. We don't really live that. Because we trap in our structural context that we don't really trust our philosophy, our knowledge as people in Indonesia. That's why my book is actually intended to do that we have to post more experience from Indonesia, bringing more knowledge on Indonesia to international level, international discourse on interreligious studies area. So we have more voice on that, we have more confidence on that we can also stand on our feet. That's why decolonizing interreligious dialogue is really important in the context of Indonesia. And second, because like program like moderation, like religious moderation is too elite. We don't really believe that moderation is actually our DNA in Indonesia. Like every Idul Fitri, I will bring my kids to their grandparents' graveyard in Solo with their Muslim siblings, extended family, come from Muhammadiyah and NU. We come together and then introduce the graveyard to them, to Christian and Muslim, Muhammadiyah and NU, and they come back with their broader understanding. Even from the cemetery, we can learn about interreligious relation. In Western world, they don't have such thing. We have that in our context of Indonesia. So that's why we have to reclaim that and bring that to international level. And then, that's why, thank you for also, we have to rethinking elites, that's correct. Because actually, moderation, religious moderation is our DNA. It's in our life. Don't make it project. So after Jokowi, it will be end up. It will be also involve some corruption during the program of moderation, religious moderation. It's our DNA. Don't make it another penataran P4. Enough penataran P4. Now we have our DNA. So believe in our DNA. Believe in our knowledge. And put that, speak that. Because that's us, Indonesia. Thank you.
I would say, your question is how to get it into the grassroots, and I think what you've heard here is it really is about relationships at the grassroots level. I'd like to share one program that is actually kind of trying to bridge that gap, and that is the religious religious literacy program project that the Indonesian Consortium for Religious Studies and the IIAP are working on together, on working with the religious extension agents in Indonesia, who it's their responsibility to work with the different religions. One of the things that we're learning is that even at that level, these are folks that are supposed to be there to help support the Christians, the Muslims, the Buddhists, but they themselves don't communicate. And so part of what we are trying to do is to help them to understand what their role is. One of those aspects is religion and peacemaking or peace building and how they can work together. But we're also exploring a way, can we help them to actually implement something in the local community where they, as the extension agents, have to work together on an interfaith basis, but they're also working in a local community to solve a problem there from an interfaith perspective. And so the elite are important as far as helping us to understand the philosophical or the theological aspect of it. But we have to communicate it in a way that the average lay person, the average person in the community can grasp it. We use big words here. We use big words, but the average person, the farmer in the village, is not understanding that. But they do understand there's conflict. They do understand there's need, and they understand that there's need for the community to come together. So how can we help them do that at the local level? Another question.
We still have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
One quick question, please.
Okay, thank you for the time. I want to ask Mr. Isaac Plato, Ike Kacaken, Ibu Mama Francina, and hello? Okay. Yeah. Mama Francina and Mr.
Jack.
Mr. Jack. Thank you. So, yeah, thank you, Kacaken. I think that you had answered the question. You mentioned Hannah Arendt and Linda Tuhiwai Smith. Yeah, actually, I read both of the two books. I just want to know what is your imagination, your vision about the intersectoral dialogue, because, like you said, for me, the problem is not always located in how the people, but how the government give the space to the religious expression, like you said, about the knowledge. But in reality, we have many challenges where the people, where there are many limitations to the expression. So, because maybe Arendt and Linda Tuhiwai Smith, they also hope about the change of the institution. I think because the challenge come from the sectoral. What is your imagination to decolonizing the interreligious dialogue in the sectoral? Because we still need to decolonizing the government. And I think my question relates to Mr. Jack. Yeah, sorry. Jack, you speak about human dignity. And I see in your PowerPoint that you mentioned Imago Dei and others. So I think how can the human dignity accommodate many religious expression, like you said, because of course if we use UDHR, it can be used to cover many topics like politics, social, but how about the diverse in religious expression, and especially like the ecological based religiosity, like maybe indigenous or something, because yeah, we have in Indonesia we have problem with the limitation too. So yeah, I think it's important because religiosity broader than religion in many sectors. And for Mama Francina, I just want to hear your experience about what is the current challenge of woman woman role in the interreligious dialogue, because I know I'm from East Indonesia too, East Nusa Tenggara, and I think maybe in Indonesia we have many problem with patriarchy domination. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For the sake of time, I'm going to ask Ibu Francina to answer the question, and then you can reach out to the three of us because we're here, and we can follow up with your questions independently. So, Ibu Francina, if you would like to respond.
Well, thank you, Pa. Sorry, I don't hear you well. I think the internet connection is a little bit unstable. But well, you're asking about women's role for this interfaith, interreligious dialogue. I think us as a women, especially in the academic level, but also activists, women who are activists and women who are working really in the grassroots level. We work together with other women from other faiths. So we have no problem at all. We don't have problem at all. Because we talk about what is common, what is common need of the community, and what is emerged in Papua today. So those are things that let's say layer that also the need that help us also to live in inclusive society, inclusive community that brings us out of all the limitations and then engage toward inequality, injustice, for example, that we are experiencing in society in Papua today. So let me take one example. I have my classmate from the high school SMA, which most of them are Muslim. We do have like a kind of this reunion times to times, or if there is like a gathering, something important happened to one of us, and we just visit. And my friend from Muslim, they sit there in the service, in the family worship. They sit there with me. They also strengthen me. They also accompany me when I was in a very difficult situation. One of my friends have a condolence, and we all go there to their house. So I think these are good practices that we are best practice, good practice that we are in as a women, but it's beyond, even not only women, but also men. So that is. Thank you, Pa.
Thank you, Ibu Francina. Pak Eric? Oh.
The question for...
How's our time?
Yeah, maybe the speaker can answer the question and then
Okay.
the time is end.
Yeah, here we can discuss it more outside. We discussed in our class interreligious dialogue for a semester. But I think bringing ideas of like intersectionality. So intersectionality, like think about like we cross the section, cross the border, or even bringing interdisciplinarity into the study of interreligious dialogue. So interreligious dialogue is not only one discipline. It should bring more disciplines, like bring it into dialogue with others, with politics, with issue of environment, gender issues, education, and even family issues that Kakak Pendeta Francina does mention about. And also the grassroots level that Abang also mentioned, like aware of politics like transnational ideology, not only in Islam, but also in Christianity, especially when we come to the time of war in Gaza area, in Palestinian area, that it is also part of like Christian transnational ideology from US might support Israel and others. Like last time they interviewed me from US asking about how Christian response to this, this is depend, and if you're in ecumenical, you might support Palestinian. If you're in evangelical, might you support something else, because transnational is also part of our life. And also, I think it's many more we can study. Bringing Aaron and Linda to Hawaii, I think it's really important. They also struggle when they write the concept, they struggle with how to reclaiming space for humanity. And I think from Linda, we can also see that that how Aborigine can try to make a dialogue between knowledge from the global north with the knowledge from Aboriginal society. And I think this method is really important for us because we have our religious texts, we have texts from the north that we study now, philosophy, Hellenistic knowledge, and then we have our local knowledge texts that we have to also embrace. So I think this multiplicity of texts need to be in our mind when we develop our concept of interreligious studies and interreligious dialogue. So I think this is, in the context of Indonesia, it's rich, and we have to dig out from our richness and again, bring it to international community. Yeah, thank you.
I'm shameless plug. I will be talking a little bit about the intersectionality tomorrow at the conference, DACWA conference over at UIN Kalijaga. So if you'd like to come, you're more than welcome to listen. So we thank you. Thank you to Ibu Francina and Pak Ridwan and Pak Isaac for your time and sharing your expertise with us. We'll turn it back over to Pak Eric.
Thank you very much to all speakers and moderator. And now we will have a break session again. And then at 2:15 p.m., please come back here because we will have our main session 4. Thank you.
Bringing voice to the